Hello, everyone. Welcome back. So glad you could join us for the Grief Healing Telesummit again. Top experts share their best holistic healing methods to transform grief into healing and living again. My name is Chelsea Hansen. I'm your host, founder of With Sympathy Gifts and Keepsakes, as well as Global Grace, the World Association of Spiritual Grief Healing. We have another special guest for you today. We have Glenn Lord, and Glenn is from the Grief Toolbox, and he will be talking to us about the many tools you can use or need for your grief journey. And to give you a little bit of background about Glenn, he and his wife realized the need for high-quality, easily accessible information and support for the bereaved, unfortunately, after the death of their 4-year-old son, Noah. This awareness inspired him to create the Grief Toolbox, which provides many tools for those who grieve and those who want to help, including articles, grief-related artwork, a support group locator, and a marketplace. Glenn is the executive producer of the Walking Through Grief series that is used across the country in many grief groups. So welcome, Glenn. We're so glad to have you on the call.
Oh, thank you very much, Chelsea. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, so if you could maybe tell us a little of why you decided to use your loss, or what inspired you to take the loss of your son Noah to start helping other people, or if you could give us a little background.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. My son Noah died in 1999 from complications of a tonsillectomy, and he was 4.5 years old. And at the time that he died, the world was a little bit different than it is right now. The Internet was around, but it certainly hadn't matured to the level that it was right now. And there was a lot of grief information available, but the ability to track it down, find it, was kind of challenging. You could always go to your local bookstore, and they would have a small section on it. But there wasn't really the full availability of grief information. Luckily, my wife and I were found by some members of the Compassionate Friends, and we started going to Compassionate Friends meetings. Compassionate Friends is a national grief support group for parents, grandparents, and siblings who have had their child, grandchild, or sibling die. And we started going to those meetings, and that offered me hope. In the beginning, in my beginning parts of my journey, though, I struggled. I struggled a lot. I was not a person who was very good at expressing my emotions or sharing my feelings. I had kind of grown up in, the American society of the disbelief that men don't share their emotions when there are hurtful and painful emotions. That's just not part of who we are. And it took me a long time to come to grips with those things. And I had a lot of personal growth and development through my involvement with the Compassionate Friends and through the people that I met there. And I met a lot of really, really wonderful, wonderful people who helped me really see that there was a need to share all of this grief information that was out there in a way that people could easily find it. I think most people recognize that we're all different human beings. We all, obviously, we have the obvious differences. We're male, we're female, we're young, we're old. But even if we look alike and we talk alike, we don't act alike, we don't think alike. And I think we all, as a society, pretty much accept that. But I think even though we want to believe, even as grieving people, that everybody grieves differently, I don't know that there's a full acceptance of that yet. And so with that grieving differently, obviously everybody needs different realities to help them work through that grief. And that's really what inspired us to get started with the Grief Toolbox. And then we partnered with a lot of the wonderful people that we've known through this journey, whether it be, Alan Peterson or Darcy Sims or Mitch Carmody or any of the multitude of other people that we've met through this grief journey, to really get started in putting together all of the pieces that have ultimately are still in development of becoming the Grief Toolbox, so that future people grieving can hopefully find the tools they need to help them find hope and healing in their grief journey.
that is so wonderful. I experienced a loss around the similar time frame as you, similar year or close to that year when, it was much more difficult to find resources. I can totally relate to being at Barnes & Noble, looking at the books on the bookshelf. And luckily, someone connected me to their church, which was awesome. They just luckily had a grief support group, and kind of luckily how someone introduced you to Compassionate Friends. So it is so nice now that you are a leader in this area of getting the information out to people so people don't have to struggle. And I should mention the Grief Toolbox. You have a large community on Facebook, and that is an easy way for people to get introduced to all the tools that you have, because the poetry that both that you and your wife write and that you post on Facebook is just wonderful. It's so true to the core of some of the feelings people will experience when grieving. So I think you're welcoming people like, okay, these feelings are okay. Give yourself permission. Wow, I found a community who might understand me. So kudos to you for doing that. So tell us a little more of the things in the Grief Toolbox, or what tools you suggest that people perhaps check out to see what might work for them and what might not work for them.
Well, thank you. Thank you for mentioning the Facebook page. And if anybody wants to join us, please do. There's, like you said, there's over 40,000 people right now who are regularly on the Facebook page, and we also have a variety of different information. I thank you very much for crediting my wife and I with the work that we've done. But reality is we have over 300 different authors who have written a variety of different articles and artwork and things of that nature, because, again, we want to have that full gamut of experience, whether someone has lost a spouse or whether they've lost a parent or whether they've lost a brother or sister or whether they've lost a good friend. Any of those griefs, we want to have the theory behind the Grief Toolbox is that there is really two kinds of grief in this world, and that one of the kinds of grief is the kind that time and money can solve, and that may be you left your jacket at the mall. Well, you come home and you're bummed out that your jacket's gone, but you run down to the store and you buy another jacket, and 3 weeks later, truth is, it really doesn't. It's not going to emotionally affect you that your jacket is gone. You were able to replace that jacket. But when some human being or some there's pieces of our lives that no matter how long we live or how much money we have, that isn't going to solve any of those pieces whatsoever. And so we try to what we're trying to do is through the variety of different means, whether it be the articles, and as I mentioned, they're written by over 300 authors, and they cover gamuts of topics. Something, if you're looking for someone and you want to relate to someone who has had suffered a murder in their lives, and they're sharing how that murder affected them and some of the realities of their life, it can help you realize, the feelings you're feeling are not unique to you. They're being shared by other people in that world. Or if you're a counselor and you're looking to be able to help people find a community of individuals where maybe someone has died by suicide and the individual you're helping doesn't specifically know other individuals who have died by suicide, there's many articles there where people who have had a loved one die by suicide be able to express their feelings and their concerns and how that has affected them, whether no matter what that relationship is. And those articles and the can really help people see that they are not alone. I think that one of the biggest challenges in grief is it evokes so many emotions and feelings in us as people that we may never have felt before, or if we did feel them before, we kind of we poo-pooed them, we pushed them aside because initially we felt them in, maybe someone, stole your gum at school and you felt a little bit of grief around that, but that grief doesn't really teach you how to deal with the death of your mom or the death of your spouse. We just don't learn this in our society. And so you're going to feel things that maybe you think you're crazy, and you're not. More than likely, most of what people feel in their grief journey is very normal, and most of it is shared by other people. And it's important to, I think, for people to be able to relate and find those things so that they can share that. And the other aspect is many people want to share their journey with others. That's how we have so many authors, is we are very accepting of all people sharing their grief journey. We do vet it to make sure no one is saying something that is harmful grief information, but the truth is most people, as long as you're not hurting yourself or others, there's not really a wrong way of grieving. And I think it's important people see that they're not alone and have that opportunity to share that and give that opportunity to people to recognize that they do have something to give back to the world. I think it also strips us of our belief that we are a valuable human being, and that can be given back to people. And so that's one of the ways that the articles can help. As you mentioned, the artwork, and there's almost 1,000 different artworks on the site at this point in time, and we call them artwork, but they're more photo art or poems. And as you say, I think they really offer people the ability to put their emotions into words, and often they're a great way for individuals to share with other people in their lives what they're thinking and what they're feeling. It's so hard in grief in the sense that those people around us that love us and care for us and want to help us, they don't understand. And one of the cruel realities of grief is we have to teach those people in our lives around us. And whether you're a counseling center who wants to offer the ability to, an easy way for people to share these feelings, or whether you're an individual who wants to just share with your family and friends, or whether you're a church who wants to open up a new level of discussion, posting one of those poems can do an amazing job of opening up a new thought press for people, and people to say, hey, wait a second, I never really thought about what it means to sit in the grieving person's perspective of what's happening there. We hear a lot of things in life which are not necessarily bad, but at the same point in time, I think they often miss the point. People talk about moving on in grief, and when people talk about that, I think sometimes people are confused and feel that someone's asking you to, forget or drop or remove your relationship with your loved one. And that's not the case at all. Love lives on. Our love for that individual will never die. It's not about moving on and removing them from our lives, but it's about incorporating them into our lives in a new way and recognizing that our relationship with them has changed and is modified, but it continues forever. And how do we incorporate that relationship into our lives and have those who are in our lives recognize the importance of that relationship? We also recognize that one of the tools that people need is people who run grief support groups are constantly looking for materials to share with their group, to invoke conversations, to start conversations. And that's where we created that whole video series that you spoke of earlier, the Walking Through Grief series, to be a conversation starter. It is real people sharing their real grief story, whether that be people who've lost a spouse, lost a child, all different types of loved ones and experiences, to be able to start those programs, or even a complete turnkey solution. If you're a hospice house and wants to run a program, we can help you with all of those pieces and provide all of those pieces that you may want. There's just so many different tools. I mean, the reality of it is the reason we call it a toolbox is people are going to take the tools they need and leave the rest. If you're painting your walls in your house, well, you're going to need the paintbrush, but you probably aren't going to have a whole lot of use for the saw at that moment in time. At another project, you may need the saw. And so we look to try to provide all of these different resources for people to be able to help themselves and help those who are in their lives that they are also trying to help with grief, and provide an avenue for people to share the tools that they have. We have an ability for people who make memorial products to share it with thousands of people and provide those pieces for people. We have some wonderful projects to help bring out grief. As I mentioned earlier, I was a man in grief, and as a man, I think sometimes we're taught not to express our emotions. And we have a wonderful project they call the Birdhouse Project, which sounds kind of corny, but what you do is you actually build a birdhouse. And while you're building your birdhouse, you are learning and expressing your emotions of your grief. And for men, it's oftentimes easier for us to focus on a project and accomplishing a goal. And it walks through getting you to really recognize what you're feeling and why you're feeling and where it is you want to do with those feelings so you can put those feelings together, whether you want to run that yourself or if you're a grief group or a counselor and want to run that. We have all of those different pieces. We have the ability for people who run their own grief groups to share that. And we have almost 200,000 people a month coming to our website looking for all of these different resources. And if you have a grief group someplace, what better way to share it with the world that your grief group meets and where it meets and what it is you do, and do you focus only on a specific kind of loss, or is it an open group and have all these kinds of losses? And we have the ability for people to both list their groups and find groups. If you're looking for a group in a specific area, where to find these things are all out there. So that's it. It's just keeps going on and on, because the fact is there is no one tool to solve everything. I wish, I remember very, very early on in my grief, shortly after my son died, we were at a relative of my wife, and the gentleman I was speaking to, his son had died about 2 years earlier. And so I asked him, I said, okay, tell me how am I going to get through this? Mm-hmm. And he looked me in the eye and he said, I can't tell you how to get through this because you're going to have to go through it yourself. But what I can tell you is recognize that what you're going to go through and what your wife are going to go through are not going to be the same, and forgive and love each other through that process. And I think that's the reality of why we need all these tools, because there is hope to be found for all of us, but what's going to work for each individual is so very, very different.
And you had mentioned when you first went to a Compassionate Friends meeting, you found hope at that when you went to the meeting. What specifically do you think gave you hope, maybe for the people, the bereaved people who are listening who might not be feeling hope? What do you think led you or gave you hope?
Well, for those people who don't know, the Compassionate Friends is the world's largest self-help organization for bereaved individuals. It was started in England about 50 years ago, and about 40 years ago it came to the United States, and now there's about 700 locations throughout the United States. And what offered me hope with the Compassionate Friends was being able to sit in a room of people and say things that I knew other people looked at me like I was crazy when I shared with individuals how much it hurt to have other people happy in my life about something as simple as Christmas occurring the year after my son died, and have people not look at me like, why would you not be happy that Christmas is happening, but recognizing the pain that brought into my life from, not being able to share Christmas with my son that year. And to be able to have people who were further down the grief journey, some people who may be a year further, a month further, or even a decade or 2 decades further down the line, be able to see that they had grown, that they could laugh again, that there was life to be had. And this life to be had didn't mean not having Noah be part of my life, but more importantly, it meant Noah being a very major part of my life. And so what the Compassionate Friends offered me was an opportunity to be able to share and be heard, but more importantly, to also be accepted and find individuals in my life who could understand that they didn't understand. I mean, I think that's the tough part of the grief journey. Everybody wants to pretend that they say, I know how you feel. And the truth is even someone who has also lost a 4-year-old child, they don't know how I feel. Just like someone who's lost their mother doesn't know how you feel. But what they can know by having experienced a loss in their life, they can understand that what you're feeling, they felt similar aspects to it, and they can recognize that those pieces that you're feeling are not simply you being crazy or you being selfish or you not being willing or able to, live again, but rather they are you growing and developing and building and opening up. And so to me, what it offered in terms of hope was hearing from other people that they were living and having other people listening to my place of where I was, which was a place of nothing but pain and nothing but hopelessness, and looking at me and still seeing that I was a worthwhile person, that I was not experiencing things that they hadn't already experienced, and be able to help me and offer me thoughts and ideas without telling me this is the way to do it, but simply saying this is what worked for me. And that's what the Compassionate Friends offered to me in that regard. And I think that's part of the reality of the grief journey, is we all have something to offer each other in that respect. That openness, that ability to sit down beside someone and say, I want to hear your story. I want to know, I want to know about your loved one. Tell me about them. I mean, one of the things that happens is when someone dies, rarely is their name spoken again. Mm-hmm. And to have someone, look at you and in the present tense ask you, how is your loved one? And recognizing that they are dead when they're asking that question. They're not living in some fantasy world that your loved one is alive, but they're recognizing that they're still a part of your life and you're still being affected by them and in so many different ways.
And let me ask you this. You had mentioned that you're still able to incorporate Noah into your life, of course, through your work. But how else do you incorporate him into your life? Or what are some ideas you have for maybe other people when someone won't say their child's name or won't acknowledge their loved one's not here anymore?
Well, I think there's some wonderful things that we can do. I think we have to have the strength in our lives as grieving individuals to respect the fact that we do have these need for our individual to be incorporated. And for example, one of the wonderful things that we do around the holidays, when in my family, we've had a variety of different losses, and we every year before we start anything at Christmas, we light a candle. And when we light a candle, we speak the name of all of those individuals who are not with us in physical body, but yet are with us, whether that be my wife's mom or my sister-in-law's father or my son, all of those individuals who are not part of our lives, and speak their lives, speak their names. And I think that's one thing that can be done. I think another thing that can be done is also recognize that in order for other individuals in our lives to share, we have to be the first one to share. Now, that's really difficult because I also know that there are people in our lives that we're going to share with, and they are not going to be open to it. They will not. They will turn from you. You will lose friends. You will lose family. There will be individuals who will not be open to expressing and being part of your grief journey. But there are other individuals who will be if you open yourself up to that and allow and speak their name and share their name and speak of them and share them. And I think it happens in a variety of different ways. We've talked about some of those things, but I also, there are times when I think there are aspects that for me, my son shares with me, just little things that can come and hit me in a way that are, I think, just brighten my day. And, some people would argue, well, they're just coincidences, and maybe they are. But they also, to me, I think they're also, I see them as a positive influence in my life. For example, in my world, we do a lot of things on Twitter, and for anybody who follows Twitter, you know that they have on the side, they have a trending, and they talk about whatever the hot topic of that moment is in the world, and they change, and they radically change. Sometimes the same topic will be there for 3 days, and other times the topic will be there for 3 seconds and be gone. Well, out of the blue, one time I was looking at it, and I was not feeling very up or very positive or really, affected in my life in a good way. And all of a sudden, Toy Story, not Toy Story 2, not Toy Story 3, but the original Toy Story was trending. And in my life, that was my son's favorite movie. So I got a burst of positive energy out of that. I went to go share it with my wife, and I refreshed my screen, and it was gone. It had literally lasted for that second. Now, was that a coincidence? Maybe, and certainly many people would argue that. In my world, I don't think so. I think that there was a reason that happened, and to me, that was an influence and an effect on my life. And I think many of us have those things if we're open to seeing them, and recognizing that our loved ones still do affect us in our lives. And for me, I've also learned so much about myself because it's forced me to address who I am. And I would share this from my wife's life. My wife does a lot of speaking on patient safety, and she actually went back and got her PhD in patient safety and helps hospitals develop patient safety programs and things of that nature. And she is one of the shyest people you'd ever meet on the planet. But that's not who my son was. He was outgoing. He was open and willing to share, and the type of kid who would just, we almost had to. It was difficult because here he is, 3 years old, and teaching him the concept of stranger was a really difficult concept. Because to him, once he met someone, they weren't a stranger, and he was willing to meet anyone, so no one was a stranger. But that empowers her to go out there, and she's willing to speak publicly. Because of the fact that she feels like it's what he would have done. And it's empowered her to effectively, even though he's not here today, to encourage her. His life is still encouraging her to step out and do those things, just as if he was still here. She can hear his voice telling him, Mom, it's going to be okay. And so I think we have to be open to our lives, to recognizing those realities and sharing those realities with others, I think, is how they continue to affect our lives.
Yeah, those are such wonderful examples that you just shared with everyone. And I know, too, I was very inspired. Well, all your artwork is very inspiring. But in particular, I like one of your posts from the thousands about how you honor the person's life, which you are through your work. And then also you have another post where you talk about the shoulds, like you shouldn't, you explain that, the should and should not. I'm not explaining it well.
No, I think that's really important. I mean, there's a saying that many people in the grief world have probably heard, and so it's not new to people, and you have to be kind of careful how you say it, but the people say, you don't should on me. And, what they're saying with that is, don't tell me how to grieve. Don't tell me what the right thing to do is. And I think as a whole, most people in grief, it doesn't take them very long to become very comfortable with the fact of, recognizing that people don't have a right to tell them how to grieve. That if what you want to do is go to the cemetery every single day after work and speak to your loved one, no one has the right to tell you not to do that. And in fact, there are many other grieving people who do that, and it's a very normal reality of the grief world. So people are very comfortable with telling people, don't should on me. But I think where things get really confusing, and I think where people fall down in this, is we should on ourselves. We take our own historical realities, whatever that may be, the way we grew up, and we decide things should be a certain way. In my family, prior to my son dying, my parents really didn't speak very much of people who died. When my grandmother died, my parents went on a vacation, and I found out that my grandmother died because I answered the phone, and one of my relatives asked me when the funeral was going to be. And when my parents came back, they acknowledged that my grandmother had died, and we moved on. And it wasn't really a part of our lives. It was not, in my family, grief was just not something that was addressed. There was the perfunctory reality of what needed to be done, but it wasn't something where people addressed these things. And so in the beginning part of me had to deal with the fact that I felt like I should hide my grief. I should bury my emotions. And so I should on myself a lot. And I was very good at telling other people not to tell me how to grieve. But it took me a long time, and I think this is something that if other people can really think about in their own lives, is recognizing that our own belief structures limit often what we're doing when we're grieving. And as long as what you're doing is not hurting yourself and not hurting others, then there is no should or shouldn't. There is no right or wrong. If it feels right to you and it helps you and it offers you peace and you're not hurting yourself or others, then you're doing exactly what you need to be doing in that grief journey. And to me, one of the biggest things is empowering people to allow themselves to get out of their own belief structures and recognizing that sometimes our own belief structures are what's hurting us in our ability to heal and grow.
And then you had mentioned you had a piece of advice from a gentleman that you and your wife would, of course, grieve differently and to love yourself, forgive each other. In contrast to your belief system, what would be maybe a belief system that your wife had that would have been different from yours, just to give listeners an idea of the...
Well, I think that this is, a prime example of forgiving and kind of relating to one another. And this goes back to early on in our grief, largely because of my own shooting on myself, but I did not want to I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to share. I didn't want to be open. My wife, on the other hand, she wanted to talk all the time. She needed to talk, 24/7 when she wasn't, asleep, and sleep only happened when she, hit the moment of exhaustion. It wasn't, it was when she finally got that exhaustion, she slept. But other than that, she wanted to talk and she wanted to share. And so I came up with an idea that I decided that I asked her, I said, would you come mow the lawn with me? And she looked at me like it was kind of fun. I said, no, just walk beside me and mow the lawn. And what I would do is I would turn on the lawnmower and I would mow the lawn. And she would talk and talk and talk and talk. And I couldn't hear a word she said, but she kept talking, and it offered her peace and solace. And after a couple of days of mowing the lawn every day, she looked at me and said, she said, we're not really mowing the lawn, are we? We're sharing. And this is how we can both be where we need to be, but be together, and recognizing that what you need and I need are two different things. And so that would be a prime example, I think, of how we did that in our lives.
That's awesome. And I think that the story so many people can relate to. As I'm laughing, just the difference sometimes between men and women. My husband probably loved that idea. So that's funny. But the point is, that's really neat that you could figure out what worked for both of you. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, is opening up to new ideas and try things. If they don't work, then you put them away. You don't have to they don't have to keep doing something. If it doesn't work for you, try something new and different, and be open to new and different ways and ideas. Some people, my wife's a writer. She naturally writes. You see all of the, you talked earlier about a lot of the poems she writes, and she's a natural writer, and she writes prolifically on all different types of topics on every day of her life. I am not a writer. It's not natural for me to write. Now, I've written, many articles and things of that nature, but more because I want to share what's going on in my life, and I want to share, empower other people and hopefully help them with their grief journey. But it doesn't come to me naturally. For me, it hasn't necessarily been a part of my personal healing journey until I got to the point where I think, and many of us reach this in our grief journey, where giving back is part of our grief journey. And so for me, once I got that point, it became a valuable tool. But for her, even early on, it was a way she could open up and express feelings and thoughts and ideas. And so I think it is just being open to all those different tools, no matter what they may be.
And then let me ask you this question for people who are grief professionals on the call, bereavement professionals. techniques, tools do you use to help yourself not get burned out because you're so close to some of the newly bereaved people that you can really feel their pain? What do you do to help yourself?
Well, Chelsea, I'm glad you asked that. I mean, you live in that world too, and it can really truly be a struggle because to truly help individuals, you have to be able to open yourself up, and you have to really share who you are and where you're at and what you're doing. And that can be very emotionally draining. And I think in order to do that, you have to also find emotionally fulfilling aspects of it too. And there is an emotional fulfilling aspect when you can listen to and hear someone grow. I think oftentimes when you get to see someone, you can see their growth over time in a way that they can't. A friend of mine describes it much as watching grass grow. If you sat on your deck and you stared out at your grass and you sat out there even for an entire day, you would feel like your grass didn't grow at all. Yet after enough days, if you didn't go out there and mow it, it would be, kind of a disaster. And so it happens slowly, and oftentimes you can see that growth in other individuals in a way that they can't. But I also think it's important to be able to have recognize that I have a lot of friends who are also grief professionals in the grief world and do a variety of different pieces. And I think it's important to share with individuals who are also in this field and be able to share with them, while maintaining the necessary confidentialities, share with them your own feelings and share with them your own realities of what's happening. I think sometimes it's difficult to when you're helping someone else, you may have an emotion triggered in yourself, and it's not the right time or place for you to share that emotion back with them, but you can't deny that emotion. You still have to share it and deal with it, and I think that's important. I also think it's important at times to put this away and to recognize that at times you are professionally helping people, but there also has to be times when you do other things in your life, whether that means you're at your kid's soccer game, or whether or not you're watching a movie, or whatever those pieces are that you do for a run, whatever it is you do in your life to have those other pieces of it. There's times it's okay to shut down and not focus on this piece and recognize that your life is that, and that balance is really I think the key to being able to not burn out through your helping of other individuals in their grief journey.
And would you say the most rewarding part of your work then is seeing someone grow, like you can see the progress they made, or what part fulfills you the most in this type of work?
The most rewarding part for me at all is exactly what you said. Seeing that grief growth in individuals. I have some people that I've known for a long time on their grief journey. I've known them from when they first found out and were in that utter shock and disbelief, and when even the act of taking their next breath was an accomplishment in their lives. And seeing them grow and develop over time, and to the point where now they are the individuals who are helping others. They're share, and that helping doesn't necessarily have to be something big. There's so many different ways that people can help. It doesn't mean you have to devote your life to doing this. It may simply mean, that you write one article every now and again. It may mean that that you are the greeter at your grief support group. It may mean that you're the individual who speaks it to your church, or you're the person who picks up the phone and calls someone when they don't want to be called, and when no one else wants to call them. And you're the person that does those things. And to see that growth in individuals is just amazing. And then to have people really be able to share that they can see that growth in themselves, I think is really the ultimate fulfillment in my world, to be able to see that people recognize that they've learned to have the pain dance with the joy, and to have the hope dance with the missing. And I think that's really what it is. We still miss our loved ones. We still have pain at times around them not being here. But we are able to recognize joy and hope and love and living in our lives And that doesn't mean you don't get, knocked on off your feet at times, but it does mean that you're able to see both at the same time. And to see that in individuals is just an amazingly beautiful thing.
And you might have alluded to this already, but I guess you probably would consider yourself a veteran griever now because you're farther out years-wise since you lost Noah. What lessons or what would you like to share with people who are new to the journey? Or what words of wisdom?
I think the biggest word of wisdom is whether or not you are right now, and I know that for myself there was a time when I didn't believe hope was possible.
Yeah.
I didn't believe that there was joy to ever be found again. And what I would say is be compassionate with yourself. We are so hard on ourselves, I think, at times. Be compassionate with yourself. Love yourself. Recognize there is no timeline for grief. There isn't we in our society oftentimes, you get your 3 days off from work, you show back up. Maybe for the next 2 weeks people are still somewhat sympathetic. But much after that, people start to say, things need to get back to normal. You need to start doing everything you're doing. And we do need to live. We obviously need to put food on the table. We need to have our responsibilities in life. But at the same point in time, things are never going to be the same. There would be a part of you that is always, that you've been, changed forever. And with that, I guess the big thing I would say is there is joy, there is hope, and even if you can't see it, believe that I believe it. And if you can do that, and I think there's many, many others out there, that take advantage of some of these tools and look at these tools and listen to other individuals and believe that they believe it. And believe if they believe it, then maybe one day you'll believe it too.
Yeah, that's awesome, because I, too, remember a time when I wouldn't have believed that. So, yeah, that's awesome that the veteran griever can tell you that. And kind of a bigger question for you, you talked about, like, in your family, how we kind of didn't talk about our emotions, whatever. We didn't talk about loss. It seems like society, we're starting to shift the paradigm, or around that. How do you think we can educate society more about supporting the bereaved and to not be afraid of death and to acknowledge it, how to help your coworker and all the stuff that goes with it so you don't lose a third of your friends who just can't support you? Like, what education do you think we should do or need? Or
Well, I think that's a gigantic question, because I think there's so many different areas we need to, if you're going to look at it from a societal aspect, I think there are so many areas where we need to educate ourselves, and I think we need to open people up to that reality. But as you say, it is changing a lot. I mean, I see kids all the time, 21, 23, 25-year-old kids. And well, for me, that's kids. They probably don't feel like they're kids, but they're I see in the back of their window, they're talking about, rest in peace there, and they have their best friend's name there or something of that nature. And they're openly expressing the fact that individual is still a part of their lives, and they're still, they still are affected by that. And I see that changing. I see, as you say, I think a lot of this recently, and I don't want to. Spoiler alert, gravity is a incredible metaphor for the grief journey, and I think you see, things like that entering into our culture, where even Hollywood is opening up people to the fact that there is hope to be found in the grief journey and things of that nature. But I think the biggest things we need to do is take things on a personal level. I don't think as individuals, most of us are not going to be empowered to, make the next great Hollywood movie or, create a television show or something of that nature. But I think where we are empowered is to take that responsibility. And if you have individuals in your life who are needing this education, share with them. I think most of the people in our lives that say the wrong things to us, they didn't mean to say the wrong things. They meant to say what they thought was the most helpful thing possible. And if we, as bereaved people, can recognize that when someone says that hurtful, we may get hurt really bad when someone says, aren't you, can't you, move on with your life, and can you reinvent, can you see it, there's other things. What they're really saying is, I love you so very much, and I don't know how to help you, and I want, to do whatever I can for you. And that's what they're saying. Their words aren't saying it that way, but if we can hear that and recognize to say, hey, I thank you for thinking about my loved one, but here's how you can really help me. Share with me. Maybe you'd like them to, once in a while, come over and share memories with you. Maybe if you are an individual, one of the biggest gifts that people can give someone in grieving is a memory. I mean, maybe you may have a photograph of someone that they don't know about. Another friend of mine, her father died. Her father was in the military. He was in the military during World War II time, and there was a picture of her father with General MacArthur.
Oh, wow.
Another individual who had taken. Now, her father didn't really work with General MacArthur, but any closeness. But at this particular moment, at this particular instance, he happened to be there, and there was a picture taken of him. And this individual who didn't know the person at all just sent this. And I thought, you might like to have this to know something a little bit more about your dad. And that was a very, very meaningful thing, to be able to share that memory that was not part of her life. That was not a memory she had, but now it was a memory she could share because it had been shared with her from someone else. And I think that is something we can do too, is be open to those pieces, and be willing as bereaved people to recognize that most of what people do, and I don't want to say there aren't people that aren't out there to hurt people, because there are, but I think well more than 95% of what people do, they mean in love, and if we can try to see it that way and try to help them, I think most of them want to be helped and want to do the right thing. If we can help them show how that would help us. And if we as bereaved people can have the courage to reach out to those in our lives and remember what helped us in our grief journey is at least a starting point for what's going to help those in our lives who are also hurting. And if we can have the courage to do that, we can also help others in their grief journey.
Yeah, that's such helpful information and such great ideas that you shared. And the story about the photograph from World War II. It's funny, a few years ago I wrote an article on a similar concept, like maybe share a piece of artwork the person made or a photo. And my mom's cousin, who I really didn't know, she sent me a picture that my mom had drawn when my mom was only 15 years old. So the picture now is like 60 years old. So what a nice gift to see this picture my mom drew as a teenager, and the picture was just of a little child, a little boy praying, kind of like maybe a picture you would see at a church. And it was so neat because it kind of looked like my little boy, so that was just a simple act of kindness that made a big difference.
What a beautiful gift to see that aspect of your mom, and that was that's a part of her that you didn't know until that moment, and to be able to have your mom still grow in your world is such a major gift.
Yeah, I know, it was wonderful. And then tell me a little bit about your the Walking Through Grief, a guide to the grief journey. Tell us about that, and I know you have a free gift that people can view it if they would like.
Absolutely. The Walking Through Grief is a entire video series as well as a grief support series, and it's really divided into two primary categories. One is we have an entire program which is designed to be run as a 9-week grief support program. And if you're a church or you're a hospice or you're a counselor and you want to run a grief support program, this is a turnkey opportunity for you. We provide all of the materials, whether it be the the videos that can help start conversations, the worksheets for people to work through many of the aspects of their grief, or ways for people to privately share their loved ones' thoughts and feelings, and that is all there for anybody who wants to help others and wants to run that grief group. And then we also have a variety of different single videos on a variety of different topics, whether it be, as you talked about, how to help the bereaved is one of our topics that we have out there. If you're someone in your life is hurting and you want to understand a little bit more about some of the things that may help. And the format of the videos is very much, there are two moderators on almost all the videos. Only exception would be Surviving the Death of a Child, which does not have any moderators. But all of the rest of our videos have two moderators who are both bereaved individuals but also grief professionals, being Darcy Sims and Alan Peterson, and they share a little bit of the aspects of the topic around that subject. And then there's a large part of people, real bereaved individuals, sharing in their own words their thoughts around that topic. So you can hear how so many different people will see things differently. And we have, bereaved siblings and bereaved parents and bereaved children and bereaved spouses, and we have young people and old people, and we have people from, the South and the Northwest, and it's a variety, trying to get a cross-cultural picture of the United States, as well as cross-cultural of all different types of grief experiences. And then people share their view on these different topics so that you as a bereaved person can relate to them. You as a grief counselor can utilize this as a tool to start conversations. If you're a grief educator, I know that our programs are used in colleges because they bring, instead of bringing in a bereaved person to speak, where that individual may be, hurt by some of the thoughts and questions and feelings that are shared by the students, they can play the video and the students can say what they need to say. The professor can, help the students grow and learn, and no one's hurt because it was a video is the only one. It was a real person sharing real thoughts, but they aren't there to hear the students' thought process of their growth through this. And that's available. The singles are all available as DVDs, or also they're available on demand where people can view them directly on their internet-enabled an internet-enabled device. And as you mentioned, I want to give a free gift to anyone out there who is interested in having it. Between the March 12th and April 7th, we're going to give away the Walking Through Grief, A Guide to the Grief Journey. What that is about an hour, and as I talked about, it has the moderators and a variety of different individuals sharing their grief journey, and we've tried to touch on a large number of the key elements of the grief journey. Some of the things that you and I have talked about here in terms of how do different people grieve differently. What are some of the things that helped and hurt through your grief journey? How do you deal with some of the holidays? How do you, incorporate and find hope in your life? What do you do to honor your loved one? A lot of these topics are addressed from individuals sharing that piece to them. And I believe all this information will be on your website, but I'll go over it just quickly. It's the Walking Through Grief, A Guide to the Grief Journey. The on-demand version is what we'd be giving away for free. And kind of a long web address to get there, but I'll give it real quick. It's thegrieftoolbox.com/content/guide-grief-journey-1. Well, you know what? I don't think I'm going to give it all out because it's just too long. But I think if people can go to your website and they can find the direct link there, I think that would be best.
Sure.
And if they go on that link, then they can click on that. They can go in and add it to the shopping cart. The on-demand videos are normally $7.99, but in this case they would be completely free, and what they would use is a coupon code called GriefTool 2014, no spaces, GRIEFTOOL 2014. And when you apply that to your order, it'll ring that out at $0 for you, and then you can view that directly on any of your internet-enabled devices, whether it be your iPad or your phone or your computer. As long as you have internet access, you can view that video as many times as you want for 3 days after you start that video on demand.
Awesome. Yeah, and then maybe people can see if they like that, then they know there's other individual other videos they can get as well, or the on-demand version. Yeah, so what we'll do is, if you're listening to this call now, recordings are available for 48 hours afterwards, so you can hear Glenn talk again if you'd like. But then where that recording is, we'll put all that information right under there, so you can so you have the link to go and grab this gift, and then we'll have the coupon code listed there as well, which is Grief Tool 2014. And for those of you, we'll have it there, but it was this grieftoolbox.com/content/grief guide journey. Yeah, I know it is a little long. So yeah, we'll have it there for you so you can check it out. And then too, I should remind everyone, again, listen to the recordings up to 48 hours for free, again, if you'd like to. If you find that you want to purchase the recordings, that's certainly an option as well, because the speakers that we're having, as you can tell, are just amazing. And the amount of information and valuable information they're sharing is awesome, whether it's for you individually if you're bereaved, or if you're a grief professional, bereavement professional, spiritual worker. To get all these ideas you can apply both to yourself and for any clients that you serve as well. So yeah, Glenn, we really appreciate your time today. And tell us one more time your website address, I could say grieftoolbox.com, and then give everyone your Facebook address as well.
It's facebook.com/grieftoolbox.
Okay, so very easy. And that's just a nice tool as well. If you're out and about during your day, you look at your phone, oh, look at that nice message that I received, or oh, look at these people understand how I'm feeling as well. So I think that's really effective as a easy social media tool that can help people feel better as well.
Absolutely.
So any final thought you want to share with us, Glenn, and then I will let you go and everyone else go, but you gave us such great information.
Well, if I have just a minute of everyone's time, I'd like to
try
to give everyone a gift of a memory. I think one of the things we do in our own grief journey, I think sometimes is we don't spend the time to remember our loved ones enough. So if everyone would just take a moment with me and sit down in a seat. If you're driving, don't do this while you're driving. But if you're in a place where you can sit down and turn off the television if you have that in the background, or go away from the rest of your family, go in a quiet place and sit down for a moment, and just sit down for a moment. And then I want you to close your eyes. And when I close your eyes, I want you to think of a memory of your loved one. I want you to think about something that maybe you haven't thought about for a while. Think about something, and it can be whatever it is you want. It doesn't have to necessarily be the best time you spent with them. It may have just been a regular, everyday occurrence. But think about that moment. And then while your eyes are closed, I want you to go a little bit deeper than just thinking about them. I want you to take a moment. I want you to think about what smells are you smelling around you. Are you out on a walk? Or do you smell the trees? Do you smell the flowers? Are you in a baseball game, and do you smell the peanuts and the hot dogs? Or where are you? Think about what's going on around you and smell that smell, and think about the smell that's there that is around you. After you have that smell in your head, keep that smell in your head. Now take another moment, and I want you to think about what else do you see. Your loved one is obviously there with you, but what else do you see around you? Is it a bright, sunny day? Are you in a room someplace? Is this at a public event? Take a look and think about what it is that's around you. Think about what's happening there. Think about, is it cloudy? Is it sunny? Is it bright? Is it dark? Think about that and incorporate that in there, and take a moment. Breathe deep. Breathe out. Remember the smell. Remember the looks that are around you. Remember those pieces. Now think even deeper. Think about, what are you tasting? And I know that may be strange, because in some environments, if you're out to dinner, obviously you're going to be remembering that flavor. But in all of our lives, we're taking in things from all 5 of our senses. So think about what it is you're tasting. Maybe it's a dryness. Maybe it's the flavor. Maybe it's an anticipation of something. But think about what that is and incorporate that and remember that. Remember that thing. Remember what it is now. Take a moment and think about, how does your body feel? Are you cold? Do you feel the warmth shining on your body? Are you wet? what is the peace that you're feeling then? Think about how your skin is. Think about how your hair is. Think about what's happening. So now you have you're thinking about your smell and your sight and your sound, thinking about all of those different pieces. And then just breathe in, breathe out. Remember that moment. Hold that moment close to your heart. You can go to any of those moments that exist with your loved one anytime you want. Take the moment to go back and give yourself that gift of remembering who they are, of remembering where they are and what they are. And it doesn't always have to say, like I say, it doesn't always have to be the most positive things. Sometimes it can be just remembering that they were a human being too. Sometimes I like to remember that my son drew all over a wall the day after my wife and I had painted it, and he essentially destroyed our paint job for the wall. And at the moment, there was so many feelings. But now I look back on that, and that's part of who he was. That's a memory. And so take that memory of your loved one, and remember you have millions of them. And even if that memory is something, if your child died before they were even entered this world, you have memories of your anticipation of them coming into this world, your thoughts for your hopes, for your dreams, for all of those pieces that we're going to share. Take that. Remember that energy. That's a gift your loved one can still give you, and be willing to give that gift to yourself. And that's what I'd like people to walk away with, is remember that gift. And that's something you can give yourself anytime you want, as often as you want, and take the time to give yourself that gift. I think you'll find it's something you're really glad you take the time to do.
That's wonderful, Glenn. And thanks for sharing all your valuable information. We really appreciate it. You brought me back to a wonderful memory I had with my mom when I was just little, and we had gotten a puppy. So what a gift that was. So thank you, and I'm sure you helped other people too.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and I hope that we've helped other people, and I would invite other people to do it, reach out, help others, because that's how we're going to make this all happen. So thank you very much.
Yeah, what a wonderful thought. Okay, thanks again, and take care, everyone.
All righty. Bye-bye.